And good morning, everybody. Back on this rainy, dreary, foggy Saturday morning here in not so beautiful Virginia Beach. We are coming to you live once again here from Ghost of the Battlefield. And we are going to attempt to do this a little differently now. We're going to do these in a short series where we're just going to talk about the rifle and the history real quick, and hopefully we can put out more of these but take up less time doing it. So I will attempt to control my ADD today, and we will attempt to learn about the last-ditch rifles of the Japanese Empire. So this is a little short recalling the death of the Empire. And before we get into it, we have a couple announcements to make here at Ghost of the Battlefield. One is you can now support us directly at Patreon. Patreon is an online service that allows for streaming of content, movies, posts. You get all of our same content from Facebook, YouTube, and various other outlets on Patreon. You can support us with a $5 a month membership. And right there is a QR code where you can scan that code. Right now what we're offering is if you sign up for Patreon, you can send us a message with your address and we will mail you a set of personalized dog tags. And that is the 1 month subscription to Patreon subscription. And we have only 2 tiers currently. There will be more. Lots of great content on there. And please check that out. So, without further ado, again, we are live here on Facebook this morning. And as per usual, you can support us this morning also by giving us stars. Stars are enabled. You can just hit the Give Stars button in there. It's a simple button. 100 stars is $1. So if you want to tip me today, that's great. If not, that's fine also. But today we are going to talk about one of my past favorite topics. This is the death of the Empire of Japan, of course, the Chrysanthemum Throne. It's 1944. We'll go with 44. We'll start late 44. And in the words of the Emperor, the war is not turning out in Japan's favor. Submarines, the U.S. Pacific Fleet, B-29s flying from the Marianas are crippling the Empire. And, of course, they still have to manufacture weapons to defend themselves against what they feel is the impending American invasion of the home islands. So, Japan is continuing to produce a Type 99 rifle. Now, when the Type 99 rifle was introduced in 1939, it was about on par with any other rifle that you would see in service with the Axis or the Allies. It was not as finely produced as, say, a Mauser. It was better produced than a Nagant or a Carcano. So it was somewhere in the middle. It had the standard 5-round magazine. It fired the 7.7mm Japanese round, which was comparative to your 8mm Mauser or your 30-06. The early rifles had several unique features, which you can see here on the rifle in the very back here. And they featured a dust or debris cover that covered the action, a very unique sighting system which allowed for the targeting of low-flying aircraft. I don't know how many fatalities or casualties they've inflicted by shooting rifles at an aircraft, but they had in-aircraft sights. All these very finely made. When you think about machining processes, think about how many machining processes were required to make this rear sight. Quite a few. There's somewhere in total of 10 to 12 finely machined parts on that sight alone. Barrel bands, everything else is pretty well made. The rifle that you see in back there is indicative of the early series rifles. The only thing it is not fitted with is a monopod. The early ones had monopods. This one is right about the time the monopods went away. So we will remove that from the equation here for a moment. We'll talk about these two. I know you're all seeing some other things in the video here, which we could talk about later, but they'll be parts of another video. All right. So as the war progressed poorly for the Japanese, everything slowly got a little harder to do. The bayonets, we'll start off with that. The early bayonet, finely machined, polished blade, a hook quillion on there, wooden handles, push button, a very precisely made bayonet, blood groove, ended up being more like this. No finely made bullion. Handles that were handmade, as you can tell, they've been handmade. The blade has now been whittled down to just a piece of steel sharpened at one end. And this is because the Japanese industry, 1944 and 45, is being destroyed. We are wrecking the whole country with fighter sweeps, B-29 raids, firebombing. And the Japanese are finding it harder and harder and harder to continue to produce weapons and equipment for the war. The same goes for rifles. The rifle that you saw before was finely made. It was well made. It featured things like a knurled rear butt. I mean, imagine the machining process of just making that knurled edge on the safety knob. And you can see the precision with which things had to be made. And there's that sight we talked about. See how many moving parts are on that. And the stock itself. One of the interesting things is look at the rear sling swivel. 2 screws. Keep that in mind. So here we have in front of us 2 Type 99 last ditch rifles. They are different series. They are not the absolute last ditch, but they're pretty close. The one rifle here in front, the shinier one, the one with the glossy finish on it, was actually captured by my grandfather. His name was Thomas Jones. He was a Tech 5 surgical orderly, and as he always told me, as they came down the pier to get on the ship to go home, there's a stack of the rifles and a little Japanese man sitting next to them with a grinder. And if you wanted a rifle, you walked up to him and said, I would like a rifle. He picked one out of the pile, he grind the chrysanthemum off and handed it to you. And that's how he got his rifle. It is a Series 34, which is one of the later ones. And you can tell the series numbers by right here on the receiver. There is the serial number, or the series number, excuse me, the series number, the serial number, then manufacturer. This particular rifle was as I had said before, a Series 34, and it was made in Tokyo at the, you have to excuse me on the Japanese pronunciations, on the Kagyo works. There was 557,000 of this particular model made at this production facility, and it is the beginning of the Type 99 last ditches. Still has a nicely made stock. The main differences from the other Type 99s are the barrel bands. If you remember on the other one, it had a 3-part barrel band, which was welded and machined. It had 2 sets of screws in the front and 1 in the back, which secured it to the rifle itself. This is just a pot metal welded piece of steel barrel band. We've also omitted the cleaning rod. I guess the Japanese at this point figured, you're not going to have to clean that gun because you're not going to last long enough to have to clean it. So no more cleaning rods. The center barrel band, same drill. It's just a simple piece of spring steel wrapped around and welded on one side. And this one still at this point has a sling swivel on it. That's omitted by the very end of it. The rear sight, we talked about the rear sights. It's now just a piece of flat steel with a hole drilled in it. We're not worrying about distances. We're not worrying about shooting at low-flying aircraft because they're all way too fast to shoot with a rifle. So we have a simple peep sight, basically a Battle Zero sight. The tracks are still there on the receiver for the dust cover, but we don't issue dust covers anymore. The bolt is no longer finely knurled on the back. It is simply a big dab of weld to hold it in place. This is still a slightly older bolt in that it has still this egg-shaped knob on the end. The very, very last ditch ones were just a metal cylinder. So it's just like they literally took a piece of pipe, jammed it on there, and welded it on the end. Again, removing one more machining process from the production of the rifle. The only thing that's odd about this one is it features the large recoil lug. Again, you can see the rough welding on there. That's indicative of the last ditches, but usually they're smaller. And the buttstock has now, instead of 2 screws, you don't need 2 screws, you need 1 screw. 1 screw is great. Also, we're gonna start getting rid of metal butt plates. So now we have wood butt plates. Saves another little bit of precious metal, because remember, the Japanese have no indigenous metal production facility or capability. That's why they were invading China in the first place. and we stopped giving them scrap metal. Moving on to the next one. Moving on to the next rifle. Another last ditch, and we're getting a little bit more lax in production. Look at the stock on this one. It is handmade with a chisel. You can see where it was probably a simple, like a router or a foot cranked Dremel kind of equipment that they made the stock with. You can see that it's actually two parts. This part's a little nicer. The top part, if I can get it right here in the angle, can you all see the actual chisel or actual tool marks in it where it is cut down by hand to make the shape of the rifle? Again, the welded safety knob, still an earlier bolt. The thing that's weird about this one is clearly a latch ditch rifle, but we have a full chrysanthemum on here. We have the 16 petal chrysanthemum, the chrysanthemum throne, still intact. So by the time whoever got this one, they didn't care about not defacing them anymore. All in all, a very nice Type 99 last ditch. Again, no cleaning rod, no two parts. The front sights no longer have the wings that protect the blade on the side. A very nice example of the late Japanese Type 99 last ditch. The only thing that you can see that would make this more last ditch, and there are ones out there no sling swivels. There's literally a hole drilled in the stock where they put a piece of rope through it. We don't have one of those yet. I would like to acquire one day. But here you see the two examples of the Type 99 last ditch next to its predecessor, the early war rifle. So that pretty much is the story of the Type 99 last ditch rifles. They were made out of a necessity. Remember, at this point, the Japanese are trying to do everything they can do just to keep things going. They actually had coal-fired buses, if you can imagine that, at this point in the war. So these were supposed to be just cranked out en masse, given to every man, woman, and child who were supposed to resist the American invasion. They were all sure to come in 1945. Of course, the dropping of the atomic bombs precluded that, and that was the end of the war. Lots of people today will talk about the use of the atomic bomb and how it probably wasn't necessary. But the Japanese were preparing for an all-out last-ditch stance of the home islands. They were even down to the point of sharpening sticks and rods and making poles and pikes to give to women and school kids and anyone else who could carry a rod to attack the Americans with. So the debate about the atomic bomb is for another day, but this is the mindset of the Japanese at the end of the war. They were not going to give up. They were going to continue to do whatever they could do to resist. And that being said, this is the end of the Japanese Empire, of course, in 1945. Again, if anyone has any questions about their Type 99 or would like to know the series numbers, you can send me a picture of them and I can tell you the series, where it was made. We also can instruct you on if you need to preserve one, how to do it best, or any other questions like that. Again, like and share this video. We are keeping these short now so that they're much easier to watch. We might come back today or tomorrow with a couple more videos. Again, check us out on YouTube now. We're on YouTube. Like and subscribe there. We'll have some custom content there. And if you'd like to, again, support us, please try out Patreon. I have a couple good videos up there that are not on Facebook. Anyone who goes on Patreon and looks, you will see I will post later a video of we had a little traumatic incident with a fire here in the lab one day, and I'll post that video up there for everyone to see if they want to check it out on Patreon. All right, thank you and have a good day. Again, questions in the comments, and please like and share, and we'll come back to you later. What? Oh, we have a question?
I was going to say, just thank you for the stars, Adam and Bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you much for those stars out there. Again, you can continue to put stars on there after this video is over. This video will continue to be available on Facebook for some time, but it will always be available for you on YouTube in the History of the Guns section. Thank you and have a good morning.